I was misdiagnosed with PCOS, and until further notice, he says, don't think you have it. Brace yourself. This is going to be a very, very long video, but I promise you, you're not going to want to miss it. I'm going to be talking about my journey with PCOS and now what they would consider to be PCOS that results in infertility, which you guys will hear all about in this video. So if you guys are interested, keep on watching. This is going to be an extremely long video probably, and I'm going to take my time and explain everything to you guys because I feel like my story and what has happened to me is really important, and I feel like a lot of women and relationships can benefit from this, benefit from my story and me telling it. And I hope that not only young adults my age, but also girls that were 16 or are 16 and 17 years old that are sitting there Googling and are watching this video and freaked out about their fertility and their future with fertility and everything like that. I hope this video caters to you guys. So definitely, if you're over the age of 21, grab a glass of wine, get a snack, grab some water. You guys are gonna need it, but I promise you this video is not for the faint-hearted. It is going to be very, very emotional at some points, and I just want to put that disclaimer in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get right into the video. And the first thing that I want to talk about is how I got diagnosed with PCOS and why I did. I remember when I was about 15 and 16 years old that I almost never had a period, not like my friends were having every month. I would get them every couple of months. I would get the signs of a period. I would get cramps and stuff, but my period only came every once in a while. So I really didn't think much of it. I really just thought that I was lucky and that I didn't have to deal with periods. I didn't really think much of it, or that it was a sign of your body being unhealthy. So of course, when I hit that 16 years, 17-year-old mark, I started researching a lot into it, like going on WebMD and doing all these things and searching and typing in my symptoms into the internet and finding all different things that could be wrong with you. PCOS, endometriosis, cancer, what's another one? Like just all these different reproductive things that could be wrong with you, hormone imbalance, everything. Like I just researched everything. And when I was 16, I kind of thought, okay, maybe I have more of the signs and symptoms of PCOS, but I wasn't sure and I didn't go to the doctor for it. But I do want to mention that for a while I was on and off of birth control. So if you guys are around that age of being on birth control, or that you have to have your parents' consent, I was on and off of birth control, but I was not on birth control like heavily. I was not very frequent with it. I didn't do it when I was supposed to. And the weird thing is I never ended up pregnant, which is kind of crazy. A lot of people think that that is absolutely insane. I did have a very long-term boyfriend at the time. It almost lasted 5 years, so when I was 15 to when I was 20. And it was surprising that I never accidentally got pregnant because I did use birth control on and off for about 2 or 3 years, and then I decided to get off of it because I just wasn't staying on it the way I needed to be on it in order for it to be effective, and more so it was being used as, or it was being more harmful to my body than better. So when I was 17 years old and I had graduated high school, so I was almost 18, I was like in that borderline of 16 and 17, about to be an adult, and I decided to go to the OBGYN for the first time. So my first OBGYN appointment was kind of crazy. I did not have a pap smear. I didn't have blood work done. I didn't have anything of those sorts done. All I remember is going there, telling her my symptoms, telling her what I think I have, and her agreeing with me. That is basically all I remember about that appointment, and it's kind of mind-blowing. And my doctors now, the past couple doctors that I've had since I've had to move, think it's very crazy that my doctor just kind of agreed with what I was saying was wrong. My doctor kind of just agreed with me and set up a intravaginal ultrasound to kind of look at my ovaries and see if everything looked normal. I don't remember the results of that. I don't remember them explaining everything to me. I don't know if it was just because I was in a really low point in my life, or if they just didn't explain it to me properly, or what, but I don't remember them specifically saying anything that was wrong. They didn't give me ultrasounds to take home to like have my own documentation of it. I've called to get proof of those ultrasounds, and they do not even know what I'm talking about. I'm not even a patient listed there anymore, which I get it's been 5 years, but that's kind of crazy to me that they don't have my medical records. So I have been unable to look at those ultrasounds to see if what they saw and what they told me, what I think they told me what they saw is correct, or if there was some sort of malpractice in that. But obviously that is not something I'm concerned about. I really don't care. All I care about is the present. I'm not someone to hold grudges. So honestly, I'm not over here trying to like freak out and be like, oh my God, you guys stole my medical records or deleted them and you won't release them to me. Like, I'm not like that. I'm just gonna let it go because now I have a doctor who actually is helping me, and you know, so that is when she officially diagnosed with me with PCOS. But for now, almost 4 years, no, I'm 23 almost. So for 5 years almost, I have thought that I have PCOS and that it was on more of the severe spectrum. I want to talk about why my doctor at the time said that I would have what they say more of a severe case of PCOS. I guess I've never said what PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's just basically a bunch of hormones that are imbalanced, and you guys can have a bunch of different symptoms that cause it, that result from it. I mean, like missed periods, acne, weight gain, hair loss, mental state can be changed. There is a bunch of symptoms. I would look them up. The most common are irregular periods and cysts on the ovaries and acne and weight gain. But cysts on the ovaries, just because of the name, is actually not a big symptom. It is obviously a symptom at some points, but for me personally, my doctor thinks that I may have had cysts on my ovaries, but that it was at that time of the month where I should have cysts on my ovaries, and not that they were abnormal cysts. So that's what they're thinking at this time. Obviously, I told you guys, they have no access to my medical records. I've tried to get them now multiple times, and I'm not even listed as a patient there anymore. So it is quite insane that that even happened. But I want to talk about the symptoms that I had personally from PCOS and why I ended up going to the doctor, not once, but twice. So I ended up going to the doctor when I was 17, then I went when I was 19. When I was 19, it was way worse of an experience than it was when I was 17, because let me tell you, they told me a lot of things that they probably should not have told me at 19 years old. So my number one symptoms was I had no period. I couldn't even say my period was irregular. I had no period. It probably went months without it, like 6 to 8 months without it. So maybe 2 periods a year. So it's not like I had irregular periods. I had no period at all. And my sister actually suffered from the same thing, and she had PCOS as well. So I was like, okay, well, it must be genetic. Like, it's just something I'm gonna have to deal with. But that was my major symptom. My second symptom has always been my skin, which is my acne on my face. I don't have body acne. Right now I'm sunburned, but I don't have body acne. I've never really had body acne, but as I was saying, I have had really bad skin my whole life. Now that I'm older, and probably the past 2 years, my skin has gotten so much better. And in the last 2 years, I have done a lot of lifestyle changes. So do I think my acne was more of a teenager hormonal thing? Absolutely. Am I suffering the consequences of it now? Absolutely. I have very bad scars on my face. You guys can see most of the stuff on my face at this point are scars. Like, I have maybe 1 or 2 pimples at a time. Usually during my period it's the worst, but it is not as bad as it used to be. If I can find a picture of what my skin used to look like before, even if it's just with makeup, like when I was in high school, even if I was in middle school, I will insert it right here so you guys can see how bad my skin was. And that is probably my number one biggest symptom of PCOS. But at the same time, I do believe it was more of a teenager period, and what is it called? puberty kind of thing. So I don't know if that was bleeding from PCOS or just that I had a very long, prolonged time for puberty. My next symptom, which is probably the most crucial to me personally, was my mental health. I struggled so bad in my high school years, early adult years, and even sometimes now I struggle with mental health and depression and anxiety. Anxiety now more than anything, but when my dad first passed away, it was really hard. And then when I moved out on my own at 17, that was really hard. And then I moved in with someone who I was not compatible with, and that was really hard. And then I was on my own, and that was really hard. And then I was away from Mauricio, and that was really hard. So at any given point, I've always had something big going on in my life where I've always had to deal with it. And I never wanted to medicate it. At one point I did medicate it, and it made me like a robot, and it made me emotionless. And I would rather feel emotion and be sad than no emotion at all. So I decided very early on that medicine was not my way, not my thing. I wasn't gonna do it, and I was gonna do anything naturally to help me. And if you guys want me to make a separate video, because that would literally be an entire video on its own on how I conquered my depression, basically solely on just natural remedies and what I did to help me cope, let me know, because I would love to do that for you guys. But as far as anxiety goes, I still struggle with anxiety very, very much. Busy stores, leaving the house, meeting new people. I'm not mastered anxiety yet, but I still try really hard in order to have it under control. Now we're going on to my fourth major symptom, which I only got leading up into 2017, 2018, which was weight gain. And it was like fast weight gain. Like, I mean, it spiked quick. I went from being like 130 to like 180, like almost instantly. My pictures went from 130 to 180 almost overnight, and I became super uncomfortable with myself. And it was really hard. And at the end of 2017 and in the beginning of 2018 is when I started to go to the gym, which is 2 years ago, which is what I want to talk about towards the end or middle of the video, which is going to be the main portion of this video, is the last 2 years and what I've done to help me with my anxiety, depression, skin, weight gain, emotional status, like PCOS, periods. All that is going to come in this video. That's why I'm saying it's going to be a long one, but it will be really worth it. All right, so the last symptom that I had, which was very minor, and it only comes in strand, like in little, what is it, like bullets, it like it's not constant, is hair loss, which you guys can tell I do not have a problem with hair loss being super dramatic, but I do lose quite a bit of hair, which can be a sign of hormone imbalance, which is also a sign of PCOS or a symptom of PCOS. So even though you have hair loss, that doesn't mean you have PCOS, but it is one of the symptoms if you have multiple of the symptoms and then have been diagnosed with it. All right, so now we're moving on to my doctor's appointment a year ago, which was right when I was getting married to Mauricio, and we had decided that we wanted to start a family immediately, like quickly, and be effectively and efficient about it. But he was going back overseas, but I really wanted to go to the doctor and talk to her about this PCOS that I had no idea about. I lied. Let me back up. I want to talk about the appointment I had when I was 19. It's not that significant, like with appointments and diagnosis, but when I was 19, my doctor told me I had like a 10% chance of conceiving naturally, which was such a big bummer to me. That was probably one of the ultimate things. And from 19 until when I went to the doctor's appointment a year ago, that has been on my mind, and I know that. And I claim myself as being infertile, and I will tell people that I can have kids. And that was stuck with me for so long that I learned to cope with it. But at that doctor's appointment that I'm talking about now, when I was 21, I lied. Yeah, I was 21. Was I 21? Yeah, I was 21. I was about to be 22. So I was 21, and I went to the doctors to talk about everything I needed to do about Mauricio. I wanted to make sure my body was right. Was there something I needed to get on medication-wise to help regulate my body? And the only thing that she told me to do was keep doing what I was doing, which was living a healthy lifestyle, and add prenatals to it, which I did. I've been taking prenatal vitamins for a whole year, and I think they have helped a lot. So now, next, I want to talk about the past 2 years. What I've made and those changes are the changes I've made in my life in order to have such a big impact on what I called PCOS. You guys are going to get to the point where you are realizing that PCOS is not actually what I have, but I went my whole life, my whole teenage years and young adult years thinking that I had PCOS. So up until this point in my story, I was still very gung-ho that PCOS was 100% what I had. 2 years ago, I decided I wanted to lose weight. I started going to the gym, went to Planet Fitness. I went with my sister after work, but I did not do anything about like eating habits or anything like that. I just went to the gym and I did the same thing over and over and over again. In April, I decided to leave my toxic relationship that was toxic on both ends, and I decided to become just single for a while. And after I left him, I became very much in love and involved in the gym. It was something that I really fell in love with doing. I lost a bunch of weight, I toned up, I started my career in fitness, I started my career on social media, and I just felt like I was sky high. I was working 2 jobs, and I just felt like I was at the best time. I was getting a regular period, which I will show you guys in a couple seconds on the app that I use because I've been tracking it for 2 years. I started to get more of a regular period. And if you remember what I said before, I got a period like once or twice a year. So then my periods became more regular, but they were still very irregular, if that makes sense. But during this time, I was also not eating correctly. When I first started working out, I was still eating whatever I wanted. When I was working 2 jobs and I was going to school, I didn't eat anything at all. I almost had no time to eat. If I ate, it was junk food or fast food or restaurant, you know, something on the go. And I really struggled. But it wasn't until about a year ago, which is when I moved to North Carolina, that I really became involved with me and listening to my body, going to the gym hardcore, implementing cardio, watching what I ate, taking care of my mental health, following my dreams, doing what I loved, falling in love with this amazing man. And I realized that my body completely changed, and I went from having no self-confidence to having so much self-confidence and so much self-love for myself that I felt I was able to love again, which I always told myself that I would never love a man again until I learned to love myself. So with that being said, I learned to love myself really quickly in like that first year, and I just blossomed, and my period became regular. My emotions became more at ease. I didn't have outbursts as much. I wasn't moping on the couch as much. And I just had the ultimate life when it came to that year. I was literally changing my life around, and my acne cleared up. My hair loss went away, and all those types of things. Like my PCOS almost like it vanished. So when I went to the doctor a year ago, I told her that I had made all these drastic life changes and that I was ready to find out if I could have kids. You know, I was getting married and we wanted to have kids, and he was older and we were ready, and that was what we wanted. I showed her my app and I told her about my life and my cycle, and she honestly told me that she didn't even think I had PCOS in the beginning, but that I was just a late bloomer and my cycle regulating, and that it took me a while to regulate my cycle. She's like, yeah, you might have had signs and symptoms of PCOS or a hormone imbalance, because you might have, but it wouldn't have been so bad where you had PCOS. Your body just needed more time to regulate your hormones, and that's what puberty is. That's why teenagers have high spikes of emotion, is because their body is regulating their cycle. They're trying to figure out how to use all these emotions and all these hormones and stuff. So she thinks that my cycle and that my balancing just took a little bit longer than normal. So she was the first doctor to tell me that she didn't think that I even had PCOS, and that I wouldn't have trouble getting pregnant. So then she told me to get on a prenatal vitamin, which I did. And she told me that once I started trying, after 6 months, if I wasn't successful, to come back to her, because still I was considered going to be having infertility issues, and that I would have troubles, and that if I needed help after 6 months to come in, because most women wait a year, but she said you're already at a high risk for not being able to conceive. Not that you won't be able to conceive, but you might need help, which is normal, and you need to come in earlier so you're not having that constant heartbreak. So that's exactly what I did. When Mauricio came home in December, we started trying immediately, and it wasn't until last month when I went to the doctor, or actually a week ago, when I went to the doctor and I was told some really crazy news, and I'm gonna tell you all about it. So before I talk about my appointment that I had last week and what we talked about and what I was told, I want to go over my cycle a little bit the past 2 years so you guys can see exactly what I mean. That my body and my cycle have completely changed since I changed my lifestyle. I use the Glo app, which you guys will see right up here. I will put a little screen recording. You guys can see that my ovulation is predicted to be in 9 days. And I'm gonna go ahead and click on my calendar so you guys can see exactly what I'm looking at. So I'm gonna scoot over so I know that I have room. And I'm gonna scroll all the way back up to 2018. So as you can see, I started tracking my cycle in March of 2018 on this app. And I got my period on March 17th through the 19th. It was very small, and I didn't record anything on here when it came to signs and symptoms or anything. I just didn't, but I had only a 3-day period, which is pretty normal with women with what they would consume to or assume to be PCOS, is what I was diagnosed with. And so April, I went without a period. Then in the beginning of May, I had one. And then I had a pretty quick one right after that in June. And then July, I had one a little bit later in the month, but I had one. August, again, later in the month. It was like a week late. September, I went without one. October, I finally got it again at the end of the month as well. November, I got one towards the end of the month as well, which that one was literally 29 days. So that was a perfect cycle, but it was still really irregular and it was not constant. So it still is not considered healthy. And then I had one, as you can see, pretty much a week late in there, and it was day 36. Now we're into January of 2019, which is almost or over a year ago. Had one at the end of the month. February, I had one in the beginning, so I didn't get one until the beginning of March. And then April, I got one. May, I had one. June, I did not. July, I had one. August, I had one. September, I did not. October, November, December, January, February, I did not. Now I'm gonna tell you why. Because I had my wedding that day, the day I was supposed to get my period, which was the 21st and the 22nd. I literally got married on the 22nd of February. So my doctor was like, I ain't even gonna count that because I already know the stress that you had. So we're gonna go back up to about October. So October 3rd, I had a period. Then November 14th. Then December 20th, January 21st, March 7th, April 10th, May 14th, and I've had pretty frequent periods. Hello. Can you sit? Can you sit? Can you sit? So I've had pretty frequent periods. They're not necessarily like solid, they're still irregular, but they're there. And my doctor believes there's no reason as to why I wouldn't be ovulating with such a regular, frequent period. With PCOS, you can also struggle with ovulation being absent. So you have like, I don't know exactly what it's called. Let me look it up real quick. It's called an anovulatory cycle, which means you don't have, or you don't ovulate through your period or when you're supposed to have a period. So that is when I decided, when we were at the 5-month mark of not being able to have children or be struggling, I decided that I was going to do as much as I could in order to help us get pregnant. I have to say that with a lot of passion because I did a lot. I took ovulation tests and I ate healthy, and we did it when I was supposed to, and I still ended up not pregnant. So that is when I decided I need to go see a doctor, because at that point I was 6 months and it was time for me to go see if I needed to have assistance to get pregnant. All right, so guys, so this is the hard part. This is the part where I might get a little emotional, because it's kind of gut-wrenching. So if you remember from the beginning of my story, I was 17 when I was diagnosed with PCOS. So we're almost 6 years into me thinking that I had PCOS. We're 4 years into me thinking I only have a 10% chance of having children. And I'm 2 years into having a pretty solid period with very mild symptoms of PCOS. So I went to the doctor, very, very terrified of what he was gonna tell me. I thought that we were gonna have to go through IVF. I thought we were gonna have to do something crazy. And when I got to the doctor's, he asked me if I had been tracking my ovulation, and I said I had. I showed him, and he was like, but you don't have high LH levels throughout your whole cycle, which is something that's common with women with PCOS, is having high LH levels their entire period. So he was very estranged by that. He was like, so you're telling me that they diagnosed you with PCOS, but you have a regular period, which he said I would consider regular for someone like you, for your experience, and you're telling me that you don't have high LH levels throughout your cycle? And I was like, I guess, like, I know I sound crazy, but yeah, that's what I'm telling you. So he went further into it and kept asking me questions and saying, did you have blood work drawn? No. Did you have any type of test done to see if you had a hostile uterus or if you had PCOS, like you'd cyst on your ovaries? And I said, no, all I had was that ultrasound, but I don't remember the results and I can't get them. They don't have them. And he was like, I truly don't think that PCOS is what we're looking at. And I was like, okay. He was like, when was the last time you saw a doctor? And I said, well, I saw one about a year ago at the same time frame. I told her that I wanted to plan on getting pregnant and that I wanted to make sure my body was ready and that I was doing everything I possibly could to help and benefit. And she also told me that she thinks that I could have had what seemed like PCOS. So they call it fake PCOS or early diagnosed PCOS, which means it's not for certain. No one told me that. No one told me that it was not certain, and that it was something that my body could progress into, or that I could grow out of it and it was just aborted PCOS, and that my cycle just took a little bit longer to regulate than most. So at this point, I'm confused. I'm like, what do you mean you don't think I have PCOS? Like, I've spent 6 years dealing with it. I've spent 4 years thinking that I can't have kids. I've spent 2 years literally obsessed with my period. Like, obsessed. When my period was supposed to come on the app, I would go to the bathroom like 20 times in an hour to make sure my period started. I would nitpick every little symptom, ping, pin, little cramp in my body. And you're telling me that it literally is what you're gonna call aborted symptoms of PCOS. When I tell you that I was literally distraught, I tell you I was distraught. I just couldn't believe that I had been misdiagnosed with PCOS. And he says, I don't think you're misdiagnosed. He's like, and there very much well could still be if you resort back to your old lifestyle. You stop working out, you live a sedentary lifestyle, you don't watch what you eat. You eat a lot of fatty foods, you eat a lot of high carbs, like fatty, nasty carbs and foods and stuff. Obviously you need all that to survive, but the bad part of it, like too much of it, or the greasy food, or the pasta that's covered in butter and stuff, and you eat pasta for every meal. He's like, I think that your body might be extremely sensitive to that type of stuff, and you might have a hormone imbalance. So what he did was he did a pelvic exam, no ultrasound. So this is TMI. If you guys are not interested in this part, you guys can skip over it. But I had a pelvic exam. I did another pap smear, my yearly pap smear with him as well. And he checked my ovaries and he was like, it feels normal. And at the beginning of your cycle, right after your period, your ovaries should feel kind of weird. You know, they should still feel very bumpy and lumpy and not healthy. And he's like, but your periods are 5 days long. They're heavy flow in the beginning, then they lighten up, which is very normal. They become regular. You fill up a tampon, half a tampon, whatever. And he was like, he's like, I don't feel comfortable diagnosing you with PCOS or confirming it until I see blood work, and that is what he ordered. So I'm going in for blood work on June 6th, or once I have a peak in my ovulation test strips, then I need to go after that, like the day after I get the high peak LH levels, I need to go get my blood drawn so that I can be tested to make sure my body is releasing progesterone, which is what would happen if you ovulate and you don't get pregnant, or you still can release a little bit of progesterone, I'm assuming. I don't know about that, but that's what he's looking for. It's the release of progesterone, which would confirm ovulation. That would be the first step. Then he also ordered a post-coital test. I don't know what that means, but that is checking for a hostile uterus, which he says nothing is related to PCOS. This is just the first thing of fertility that we're going to check. He's like, I know you've been diagnosed with PCOS, and he put it in quotes. He's like, I won't sit here and say I diagnosed you with PCOS. He says that you said that you have it to me. I'm not gonna write it on your chart until it's confirmed. So I'm gonna say, he basically wrote on my chart that I had potential signs of PCOS and that we were gonna have further testing done. So the post-coital test is June 15th. But he honestly thinks that nothing is wrong. He's like, I really just don't feel like what you're explaining to me is what it is. He's like, I would never diagnose a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old or a 22-year-old with PCOS unless there was a lot of symptoms, like there was no period and there was a lot of pain and there was a lot of cystic ruptures and there was a lot of acne and there was a lot of hair loss. And you know, he's like, I wouldn't necessarily go down that road unless it was really severe, you know, coming up on the age of 25. He's like, but you're 22, almost 23, and your period is quite regular. And you know, he's like, I honestly just think that we need to make sure you're ovulating, and that you are doing the right things for your body. So I am supposed to be continuing being healthy, doing what I need to do to be healthy. But I was misdiagnosed with PCOS, and until further notice, he says, don't think you have it, because he says it also can be a mind game, which Mauricio also agrees with and said that you thinking you have PCOS could be a big part of it. So I am having a really hard time eliminating that thought from my body, from my head, and I think it's crazy that I was misdiagnosed with PCOS, or that I could be. It won't be confirmed until after that blood drawn test. That will indicate and confirm the results, or if he thinks that I have PCOS. So that's the first step. And he's like, you know, you could get pregnant by then, and when you go to get that blood work done, we're gonna see very small signs of HCG in your blood. If you wait a couple days after and you implant quickly, we might see levels of HCG, which is very rare, because he wants me to go literally the day after the surge, the day after, or the 2 days after. Dixie, that was rude. So yeah, that is my story about being misdiagnosed with PCOS. And the next step is to do these tests and to do my basal body temperature as well as ovulation tests, and continue your lifestyle, continue trying, continue doing everything we need to do, and eliminate the negative mindset and hope that everything comes back normal. I know that one question that I'm gonna get a lot is this gonna be, are we gonna consider this an infertility journey? I don't know. I feel like after everything I've been through, it kind of is. But at the same time, like, if we're able to get pregnant with just, you know, a couple of tests that confirm ovulation and that help me make sure I don't have a hostile uterus. Oh, I didn't say what a post-coital test is. That is a test that makes sure that the sperm and the cervical mucus mix together, and that the cervical mucus doesn't kill the sperm, or that the uterus does not kill the sperm. So that test is to make sure that the sperm is not killed, and that the sperm has met to the cervical mucus and is traveling up the fallopian tubes to be inserted into the cervix, or I don't know what they're talking about, but yeah, it's just testing to make sure that my cervical mucus and my junk doesn't kill sperm. But anyways, if you guys have any questions or concerns, I'm super surprised I didn't cry. I guess I've kind of coped with it, and I've learned to deal with it. Is this going to be an infertility journey for us? I don't know. Is this going to be misdiagnosed with PCOS? I don't know. Do people believe it is? Yeah. Does my doctor think I don't have it? Yep. Is that hard to think about? Very much so. But we're gonna deal with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I have an Instagram. I'll insert up here. I have comment down below, and just reach out to me and ask me questions. I would really love to answer those, and I would love to have people who are dealing with the same thing as me. And I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for the support, and I hope you guys have a very blessed day, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.